for tuning in. Today's Best Served Podcast 314. We're talking mental health mise en place as part of Workplaces Worth Working. All these alliterations, I'm killing myself. Episode number 5 of this important series. Mental health mise en place. You've heard this from me before. You know how important it is to me in the work that we're doing that we try and find ways to understand the things that we do really well in restaurants and deploy that approach, that methodology, that skill, that attribute to the things we don't do so well. And mental health is something we have absolutely struggled with as individuals, as teams, as businesses, as an industry at large. So if we can think about the way that we set our stations, the mise en place, understanding how we're going into a service from a product standpoint and apply that to the humans who are actually going to be there side by side in any given day, I think is an important opportunity for us. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And all of this week, we're really focused on kind of the day-to-day operations and how we can apply mental health support into the fabric of what we do day in and day out. So we're going to be talking to two great guests today, Sheikh from Restaurant After Hours out in Brooklyn, bringing back Patrick Mulvaney from I Got Your Back and Mulvaney BNL out in Sacramento. So with no further ado, I want to bring in Sheikh to kick us off here. Zia, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right, break it down for us a little bit. Restaurant After Hours, for those who don't know, what's the organization? What's the mission? Give us a little of the trajectory, how this came about.
Sure, absolutely. So we operate out of Brooklyn, New York. We are providing mental health support for the hospitality industry by providing advocacy, education, access to mental health resources, and virtual support group program. I will be very honest, like our virtual support group program is on pause for May, but we are hoping to bring that back for June and going forward on top of that. So for anybody that's going through a mental health issue, doesn't know signs, symptoms, where to turn to, we provide them a starting point, and then we will further assist them on their journey for recovery or for their own mental health journey from there on out.
And how did the organization begin?
So I've been a chef in New York City for 18 years. Through this industry, all the stress was getting to me. I had grown in alcohol dependency to the point where I was working 14 to 16 hours a day, leaving work, getting blackout drunk, sleeping for half an hour, going right back to work. And that was my cycle of life for over a decade. The alcohol had essentially gotten to me to the point where I had reached burnout, and I'm not throwing that word around lightly. It was my mental state, my physical state, both were just completely deteriorated, and I had no choice but to take 6 months off from the industry. Wow. So during those 6 months off, I decided that it was finally time for me to start thinking about my own mental health, thinking about getting healthy again. So but I was now in a position where I didn't have access to insurance. I had no job. So I started pulling together all these different resources that were available that did not require insurance, that were free. And that's essentially how the organization came about. So 6 months later, I actually came back with the organization in hand, Restaurant After Hours. I founded it. And it's a way to provide people with accessible mental health resources.
And to further the timeline, when was this? When did the organization actually begin?
So I was actually fired from my job due to my my alcohol problems in June 2018, and December 2018 I founded the organization.
Okay, understood. I appreciate you sharing that. And,
yeah, of course.
I mean, it's important. We've so many of us have been there, and it's interesting. I talk about this with myself, where at least I tell myself I never hit rock bottom, and I was able to find my way out of that. But waking up in your car in the parking structure behind your restaurant multiple times, yeah, like that reality for us, and we glorify it. We spend a lot of time with the machismo, the tough guy, tough gal mentality, and it's been exposed. Like burnout, to your point, is a reality of our industry. It's the inevitability so often of our industry. It is the progression. Mm-hmm. If you start as a dishwasher, you end up an owner, the likelihood of burnout is so high. So I appreciate you feeding your own need for support and then bring that to others. So I really appreciate that. All right. It makes sense now, the work that you're doing. I want to bring in Patrick now, a good friend of the show. Patrick, always a pleasure to have you on. Good to see you.
Good morning. Greetings from the
beautiful mountains. Wherever you are.
It is pretty nice. Tahoe is one of the most beautiful places on earth.
Love hearing that. That feels like it'd be good for your mental health. We appreciate all the work that you do. So tell everybody, I got your back. For anybody who doesn't know, what's kind of the practical work that that you're doing day in and day out, the resources provided. Give people a little bit of the background.
So I got your back, just like Zia. Same thing. The important piece of how you provide resources to people with mental health challenges who don't know. For us, important that it goes from anxiety, depression, substance use, all the way up to suicide, the whole range, for two reasons. One, it's important because it hurts. Anxiety hurts and is just as valid as alcoholism or drug problems or a potential suicide. And two, if you have one of the more serious problems, the potential that you'll begin talking about anxiety and depression is greater than, no one's going to come to me and say, hey, chef, I've been on a bender for 4 days and haven't slept. And that's
Right.
why, well, but they might say, I'm feeling a little anxious today. Yeah, you've been up for 4 days. That's why. But you can begin the conversation, right? And we do that with peer-to-peer counseling. Every now restaurants, probably about 15 or 20 restaurants in Sacramento, every shift there's someone who's designated as a person to talk about mental health issues. If you want someone to help you refer or just listen. And we've created a climate where there's support from leadership, from owners and chefs in charge of the restaurant to talk about that stuff. And you're right, it's hard. It's not something that we've talked about before. And it's interesting. We have a new guy who actually just this week started and was having a hard time on Saturday. He started to fold, and we're just like, what's the matter? And he's like, I'm fine. I'm like, well, no,
Right.
you're not fine. And it turns out that his dad had just been admitted to the hospital. And we said, dude, your dad's there. You got to go. And him, because he's been in the restaurant business, said, I can't leave. It's Saturday, right? Like, no, you have to leave, right? You have to take care of your father because family comes first. So it's a bit of a learning process for everybody all along the way. And just like Zia, we started in 2018 as a community because we faced over 18 deaths by suicide in 2018.
Wow, it's unbelievable the impact that it has and how quickly we sweep it under the rug because we're so busy, right? It's a Saturday night service. We're so busy. We never take time, right? We're so obsessed with time, yet we never take the time to really evaluate ourselves, the team. We don't want to look that person in the eye because we know there might be pain and struggle on the other side. We don't want to have to deal with it, right? We want to just focus on the food because we think that that is the safe space. And the reality is maybe in that moment it might be, yet in the long term, we have to think long term. So that one Saturday service, that cook, we know this experience, that cook thinks he's letting you down. The reality is if that cook can show up bigger, better, faster, stronger, more supported every shift after that, well, that's a huge net gain, a huge win for that individual, that team, that business, and the industry. But we just are so short-term thinking. So I appreciate what both of you are laying out. I want to talk about some practical steps that we can take because sometimes the conversation people say, yes, I've experienced that. Yes, I want to do something. And they go, what the hell do I do? It seems like such a big topic, and it is. How do I start the first step? How do I take the first bite? So I want to give people some practical stuff. So we're going to make sure and drop links. Zia, you have an amazing list of resources. Patrick as well, lots of resources, lots of organizations supporting what you guys are doing and developing those resources. I want to start inside the restaurant though. Patrick, you mentioned specifically that somebody is assigned to kind of be in charge of that process. And I want you to talk about the box, the magical box that I love so much. How is that person assigned? What expectations does that person have? Do they need training? Give us a little idea of the person who might be leading that process in that day-to-day operation.
So just to show you how good I am at that, the box is 150 miles down the hill in Sacramento, but it's so
we're going to post pictures of the box in the comments. Don't worry.
We started the process talking with mental health experts around the region, and what they said was you need support from leaders in your organization to say that it's okay not to be okay, right. And then you need to provide peer support or someone that people can refer to. And then finally, resources for everyone to access once you're there. Well, it turns out that we already have the peers on our floors, right? There's the guy who's not quite a sous chef that you can talk to about advice if you're a new cook. There's Yana the doula, right? Who's mothering. There's the crazy bartender. And so in some ways they were already built in. And what we did was formalize it. We put them through, we've offered everyone what's called mental health first aid in the beginning formally. Now there are other methods of learning how to speak about issues, again, all across the spectrum, how to know when it's safe. And each one of them then is on the floor every night, So when you come in to the building, you drop in a card that's there's a box with 4 colors, faces on them: happy, neutral, angry, and in the weeds. You drop in the one that corresponds to your mood that day. And when we do our lineup before guests come in, we tell all the specials, and then we say, here's the temperature of the restaurant. 6 people happy, 2 of you are neutral, 3 are angry. We're pretty sure we know who those are. But you know what? Today, there's 4 people who are in the weeds. That's what the blue card is called. And then you say, what are we going to do to help our partners, right, to get through a successful night? If you are in the weeds, what can we do for you? And what are you going to learn from tonight to be able to help others next time when you're not in the weeds? So then you go into the shift with that idea that you're looking out for your brother, that you are your brother's keeper, and moving along. And it opens up to your point of how do you train them? In my view is that they're self-selected, right? Because you already know mostly who's there. And the interesting piece for me is that some people enter into the program willingly, think that's great, but there's others, like we have a bartender, for instance, who kind of made fun of this, right, in the beginning. Oh, we're being all California.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then a month or 2 in, as it started to take hold, he came back and said, you never invited me to do this, but I've been doing this all along. I said, yes, I know you have. You've been doing the work all along, and not with portfolio and not written, but thank you, because you've been helping. And because you were helping, I didn't need to give you a badge or a title or create more drama, right? Because you were already being an effective conduit for people to go get help.
Yeah, a couple things that I really appreciate. That again, it's kind of here are the specials for the night. Here's low calls. Here's 86. Here's our temperature. Like, it just normalizes and makes it matter of fact. It doesn't have to be the elephant in the room, even though we know it is the elephant in the room. So I really appreciate that. And self-selecting, I think that's interesting too.
And the elephant is there. You're right. So then it enables to open it. So that's what we say is the magic happens next, right? When you're pulling mats, making stock at the end of the night, polishing silverware, and you say, how are you? This is what we say. How are you, comma, really? And the space between comma and really is where people know they have the opportunity, if they want to take it, to talk about their issues and see if there's something they can do about it.
Yeah, we know canned questions get canned answers in restaurants, and we see that all the time. How is everything? Everything is fine. We know that is just going to elicit a knee-jerk response out of just obligation, right? And so I appreciate that you're taking just a comma and an additional word can change the whole complexity of that communication, of that interaction. So I really appreciate that. Zia, I want to come to you because I know you've followed what Patrick has worked on, somebody who's like applied that within the restaurant model. When you're thinking about normalizing that, when you're thinking about the communication, when you're thinking about the way that within your communication as a chef to your peers, how are you thinking about layering on that communication? What are some of the things the tips that you have for chefs? Because that bartender, that's the reality for a lot of us. We're like, I'm fine. I'm tough. I'm a hustler. Like, nothing gets me down. You know, all those type of tropes that we push out and have normalized. How are you shifting that communication?
Yeah, I mean, just as Patrick said, well, one, I agree with everything that he just said 100%. It's just as you said also, it's taking that time to ourselves and putting it on pause for a second. You know, him adding that one comma, adding that extra word, how are you, comma, really? You know, you're putting yourself on pause to listen for that response, to navigate the other person's issues, you know, to let them feel comfortable and open up to you. It's such an important thing that, you know, as for us in the restaurant industry, as chefs, as managers, we're so busy, like we're constantly putting out fires throughout. But just to take that time, those few seconds, just to pause and just wait for that response. It's so important to navigate somebody else's mental health. Just hear them out, you know, create the synergy of the team completely. Like, because your staff is always going to come in, they're always going to be thinking about different things. You know, they could be thinking about um, rent they have to pay. Maybe they went out the night before, they met somebody. Maybe they're thinking about their kids at home. So them coming in wanting to be there for you, they're always going to be there and just say, you know what, I'm totally fine. I can get through this. So let me just get through the day. But taking that 1 second just to be like, how are you today? That could be just such a crucial thing in terms of navigating the day as the entire team.
Yeah, I mean, we have to shift some of the expectations that we put upon ourselves, right? We've been talking about the brigade system where, like, look, the reality is we're not an elite military fighting unit.
We're not.
We're a bunch of individuals trying to navigate our lives, navigate our day, and just get through the shift, so to speak, sometimes. So we have to stop pretending like we've had boot camp and months of intense training to be able to like know that the person next to you like has your back at all moments. That's just not the reality. When you have 73% turnover rates, it's not the reality. You don't even know the person next to you a lot of the times. We have to shift the narrative. We have to shift the expectation.
Yep.
Leave your shit at the door. Smile. It's part of your uniform. Like that.
It doesn't work.
It just doesn't work. It might work in 1 moment, in 5 moments, in even 100 moments. In the long term, we're seeing it play out. The industry has been exposed. The model has been exposed. It's been shown to be vulnerable. It burned hot, and we went from being outcasts to the cool kids to now the establishment, and we don't like it because we don't understand how to navigate that wholly as individuals, teams, and as businesses. So I really appreciate that. How do you have that conversation straight up? And I think you and I are going to wrap. We lost Patrick. His robots shut down on him. That's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
He's with us in spirit, and he's
exactly.
I think he's on 2 more episodes, so we'll get lots of Patrick. Don't worry, everybody. But Zia, for you're talking to another chef, bro. I'm a beast. I don't need that mental health support. Like, I'm strong. My game is strong. I don't need anything. I get through every shift. I've done it for 15 years. Why would I change what I'm good at already? I know you and I have had that conversation with friends and colleagues and coworkers. How do you navigate that? How do you have the next part of that? What's the comma really in that scenario?
I mean, it really just starts with just education, just having that conversation. For a lot of people, it's a very comfortable conversation to start. However, because if you've never had a mental health struggle, if you don't know that you're going through a mental health struggle, it's very hard to identify that. It's very hard to say and just be vulnerable for a second and just be like, hey, you know what? I reached burnout in 2018. I know what this feels like. I pushed way too hard. I needed to take a break and put that on pause. If you've never experienced that, it's very easy just to be like, I'm a beast. I can handle this. I can cook circles around you and just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. It's going to sneak up on you eventually. You know, we, just as you said, we're not military. We're not machines. Like, you know, we're human beings doing a job, and we have to treat it as such. And we have to take care of ourselves in the process before we reach that burnout period.
Yeah, I hear you completely. The badge of honor needs to shift. It was getting a plate thrown at your head and surviving that. Yep. It was working 70 hours, 75 hours a week. It was, for me, one of the ones I always held up was I went 7 years with never taking a sick day. And I was sick as a dog many times. And it just, why? To prove that I have what it takes. And it just, and then I didn't. And then all of a sudden I realized I don't want this anymore. Yep. And I imagine for so many people, they're holding that ideal on a pedestal, and we need to shift what we aspire to in this industry. And a lot of that comes because nobody becomes an investment banker when they're 15, 16, 17 years old. A lot of us get into the industry and we're vulnerable, we're impressionable, we're looking for leadership. And what do we get? We get a bunch of toxic behavior, and we grab a hold of it because, like, we say, yes, we did find our people. We didn't want the 9 to 5. We didn't want what everybody else wanted. And so we took everything for being, this is the way that it's supposed to be. So I appreciate you struggling through that and pointing that out. Now, let's talk about a few specific resources that you're like sharing. And if you want to follow up on that point, please do. So specific resources that if you're having that conversation with that, the machismo in the room, and you're saying, hey, why don't you just read this? Why don't you watch this video? Why don't you look at this? What are a couple of the things that you're pointing out that maybe open the door for the next conversation and the next conversation?
So I just want to point out one thing that you said, the word impressionable. That is a very big word in our industry, that a lot of us are impressionable, because when it pertains to something like a badge of honor, that could be people's trophy right there. Like people could be holding that up and just say, hey, you know what? I haven't been very good at something for a very long time, but yet if I'm able to push my body to this point, that's now my trophy. I'm very good at doing this. And so a lot of people will wear that badge of honor and just say, hey, you know what? Here it is. Like, this is what I'm good at. I can keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And that's not a trophy that anybody wants to hold up. So in terms of resources, having that conversation, one thing that I found important having these conversations with people is that I'll never force it. I'll always start by saying, hey, this is what I went through, and I'll break down my wall. And usually in return, somebody else will break down their wall in return and then open up about their struggles as well. I find that to be more effective than just say, hey, you know what? I've been reading up about mental health. This is how it pertains to the industry. It's when you force that conversation onto people, they're not always receptive to it. Sometimes they'll put a wall up and just say, hey, you know what? I don't want to talk about this. I think it's weak. That's not me, and things like that. But showing them that, hey, you know what? I am a chef. I'm a cook just like you. I'm in the restaurant industry just like you. This is what happened to me. So it usually works better by helping them become more vulnerable.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. You have to understand it to be able to understand it. Right. And then be able to have a conversation about it. So I can definitely appreciate that. From the standpoint, and it looks like I got Patrick back in the background. We'll bring Patrick back in just a second. I want to shift for these last few minutes to specifically those resources and the places that people can kind of go, because I know a lot of people are saying, yes, we need to have this conversation. We need to shift the narrative. We need to shift the dynamics within the restaurant itself. What are for you a couple of those places where that they'll get it, they'll see it, they'll understand it, and maybe they need a couple, maybe they need to hear it 3, 4, 5, 7 times, see it a few times, say, all right, and they put it to the bottom of their list. But eventually, consistency is key, and we respect effort and consistency in this industry as individuals. So what are a couple of those resources? What do you want people thinking about?
So on the Restaurant After Hours website, we have a full resources page that has close to 200 resources that are available for free for anybody to use. The website is restaurantafterhours.org. The resources page is restaurantafterhours.org/resources. We make it very easy to for people to access crisis numbers, mental health organizations, restaurant industry organizations that are dealing with mental health as well, along with Reddit groups, Facebook groups. They're all there on that one page. So for anybody that's going through any type of issue, they can go straight to that page and just find everything. And we also promote other organizations as well, including I Got Your Back, because this problem that's facing this industry right now is so large, and we at Restaurant After Hours know that we can't solve it ourselves. So we promote other organizations that are attacking it from different angles as well. And so, like, if we can't help you solve your issue, we're gonna refer you to another organization that possibly can.
I appreciate that. It's very interesting. We need to recognize the way that people communicate, the way that people learn as well. So we talk a lot about watch, listen, and read. We're trying to put content into a multitude of fashions and then meeting people where they are. So if we need to come up with a meme that goes into a meme group where people mostly just want to joke and talk shit, we can find a way to communicate in the way that they are expecting, so that they have an opportunity to go, wait a minute, I didn't realize that this was an okay thing to talk about. I didn't realize there were resources. I didn't realize people I respect and look up to are also struggling with this or willing to share about this. So I definitely appreciate that you're putting into a lot of different mediums. All right, Patrick, want to bring Patrick back in. Oh, go ahead.
Here we go.
I'm not touching anything. Sophie, bring in Patrick. You got him. Appreciate you fighting through the robots to get back to us, Patrick. Same thing. I want to wrap these last couple minutes and try and touch on just a few of the specific resources. You got a lot of organizations. I saw Kaiser Permanente, the Sacramento Kings, that are supporting, where you've gotten some mainstream buy-in, which I think is something very interesting, the approach that you've had. So I wanted to touch on, who these organizations are that are filtering through support for I Got Your Back, especially on the resource side, that we could learn from and steal for our own restaurants.
So for sure, here in Sacramento, all 4 major health groups, Sutter, Kaiser, Dignity, and UC Davis, came in to say this is important and we want to help you. What they ended up saying too was, what we're trying to teach you is what you're already doing, right? vulnerability, Zia, like you said, doesn't make you weak. It gives you strength.
Yes.
And cops, firemen, unlikely suspects of people coming to say, let's help. And it's because they love us as restaurateurs, and the love that we give out now is being returned. King specifically said, yes, we want to help for concessionaires, but we see it as a better help for ushers and ticket takers to come in and gather that. But most important, the people who break down and set up ice capades, basketball games, all that stuff, because they are literally underground, literally working in the dark at night, and have an amazing turnover, and no one knows who they are. So all that stuff is important. It's great to have all the different resources available to let you know that many voices are out there, and however you connect is what's important. And we do that in the beginning. You walk in, you drop your card, there's a sticker on the walk-in that says, I got your back. When you punch out, the last thing that comes up on your chit says, are you feeling okay? Remember, these people are here. If you're not, here's the website, and here are the crisis lines, both the dial in and the text 741-741, so that we know everyone's there in the beginning, but when you leave and you don't have it, that it will be there. One last thing, immediate thing that all of you can do out there is we take people out in the back, have a chat with them. You don't look so good. Would you like to talk to someone? There's crisis lines, either for text for young people, phone for older people, and you say, give me your phone. And you type it into their phone and say, do you want to call? Do you want to talk to them? You want to do a practice? I can be here. You can be alone. And if the worst that comes is, let me show you what happens. And you call and you say, hi, this is Patrick. I have someone here who's having challenge. Don't think they're ready to talk to you yet, but I just want them to see what the process is like. They go through, hi, Patrick, are you safe? Bing, bing, bing. Thank you very much. Click, give them the phone back and say, save that number. Call it whatever you want. Call it wheat bread, call it sneakers, so that people don't think you're crazy, right? But that means, because I can't be with you every day, but I can know that you always have an outlet in your phone to go get help. And so everyone in our restaurant, for sure, everyone has those numbers in their phones. Some of them because we've done that very thing, and others because they see that value.
Patrick, I appreciate that. Two things specifically that I think are important. One is you're modeling that good behavior. You're saying, I'm going to do this. I'll show you that this is okay. Zia, to your point too, right? I'm going to tell them that this is my experience. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm willing to do. And if you're willing to allow me to support you, I'm not going to fix you. I'm just going to be here to support you. This is one of the ways that I know how. And the other is, Patrick and Zia, for both of you, like, we need more voices included in the conversation. You mentioned the people underground. Well, how many dishwashers, prep cooks are toiling away in the basements of restaurants, peeling onions, feeling unnoticed, undervalued, underappreciated? And there's, 11 million, 15 million, depending on how you break down the math, that are part of this industry, that they matter. They have to matter. It cannot just be the anointed who get to speak on behalf of this industry. We have to include more voices. And so I appreciate that from both of you. I want to take just a couple seconds from each of you, Zia and then Patrick, just give us some last thoughts, rally the troops a little bit, and see, I even got to stop saying stuff like that, Zia. We're not troops. We're just a bunch of individuals trying to scrape together a life and finding food and hospitality that galvanizes us. So even I got to change my language. It matters. What do we need to be thinking about? One last thought from you.
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, we need to kind of move away from the military aspect. There's a restaurant consultant that once said about the restaurant industry that the P&L is the war, the shift is the battle, and the pre-shift is the battle plan. And for a long time, we were adhering that to our industry, and we have to just move away from that philosophy altogether. Like, we are not troops. We are human beings. We just need to set ourselves up for long-term sustainability in this industry, because as even COVID has showed us, like, we have no safety net. We need to find a way just to set ourselves up mentally healthy, physically healthy, and then just kind of get through.
Appreciate that, Patrick. One last thought from you before we let you guys go.
And I think, Zia, you're right. It's the responsibility, and how do we get people to engage? Because when you said, how is it the anointed few?
maybe, so clearly I'm the one speaking more than others from the restaurant. And that doesn't mean that any of them are more or less important, that we all are a team. So it's our obligation. I gave a speech last week about mental health, and someone said, is this an I speech or a we speech? Because I always say, we at the BNL, we do this, we do that. And the woman said, yeah, but you've gone through challenges. Is this going to be about you too? I said, it is about me for sure. But more importantly, it's about the team, right? That Mulvaney's BNL after 15 years has become, and each of the people who are there. And so it's important for us to be mindful of, to your point, do those dishwashers feel valued? Know that what they do is important, because it sure is. I don't like washing dishes on a Saturday night. And two, how do we make that so that the whole community, quite frankly, sees that? And the last piece, on a hopeful note, is that we are restaurants. We are loved. We are the center of the community, and people are watching what we're doing.
Yes.
And as we move forward with this, not only is it good for us personally, our shops ourselves, our hospitality industry, it's good for the country. So you, restaurant people, should be proud of what you do. Restaurant hospitality is a valuable life. It is a good way to live. If you want to be of service, this is where it's at. And in this mental health struggle, you'll be being of larger service than I certainly ever thought possible when I first started cooking.
Patrick, what a way to finish this episode. Thanks to the two of you for the work that you're doing, the leadership, the communication. It's absolutely needed. And this was an amazing week conversation. We'll let you guys go. Really appreciate both of you for your time and your effort.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Cheers.
Ciao.
All right. Great episode there. I got not much left to say after what Zia and Patrick ended that with. Make sure, check out the resources on Restaurant After Hours. You can find those in the comments from I Got Your Back as well, very specifically if you're in the Sacramento area. But that their model is being modeled in other areas across the country, so you can kind of see that as a potential game plan. Lots and lots of resources. It's hard to know kind of where to start. Just start with intent, and then find that one resource, that one thing that really speaks to you, your team, the culture that you're trying to create. It's not one size fits all. And you put in that effort and you begin that process. Good people and good things will find you through that. And the support is and will be there into the future of this industry. That is the way that we will usher in an equitable, profitable, sustainable model. That is it for this episode. Best Served Podcast 314. Mental health, mise en place. We have to set our stations and we have to start developing workplaces worth working. I appreciate you all for tuning in. I hope that all of you are doing well. And if you're not, get the support that you need. It's out there. It's shifting. And like Patrick, we got your back. That's it. Cheers.